September being the worst month traditionally for stocks. For more on the markets, let's welcome in now Professor Jeremy Seigel of the Wharton School. Professor, welcome back. It's good to see you.
Happy to be here.
So tell me what you think is in store for stocks this month.
Oh, you're right. Historically, September is the worst month of the year. Interestingly enough, in the last 15 years, it's usually been August, as everyone said, hey, get out before September, get in August. And August was not a bad month. So, you know, it's more of a question mark about what is going to happen to September. You know, I really think, you know, we're talking a lot about, you know, Twitter, Facebook, the hearings, but, you know, and that's pushed the trade war and the tariffs to the side. But I think that's the big thing, certainly, that is facing the market in this month. We know we have a Fed meeting, a decision meeting, September 26th, where they're very likely going to raise, but also give signals about whether they're going to raise again in December. You know, on Friday we have the employment report. So there's a lot of things that are certainly happening. All that said, the uptrends are still in place for the technicians. We do have a lot of momentum players in this market again, and they're riding the trends. So as long as those trends are up, you know, it may be painful to be short, but you know, clearly, you know, there can be jolts along the way, and the trend riders will jump off the train.
So you think the market's in a good place?
I mean, I think for short-term traders, it's in a good place. Not saying, you know, that there aren't uncertainty there. Short-term players a good place. Long-term players, I don't see any gross overvaluation. I know there's been talk about, you know, too much bullishness there. But hey, we're selling 18 times earnings in a low interest rate world, and that's 2018 earnings, which are pretty much in the bag. What we know about this year, I mean, that is not to me to be long-term threatening. I'm not going to say we're not going to have a short-term reaction. You know, markets in the short run will fluctuate a lot, but the trends are in for the traders, and the long run still looks good to me.
Dr. Seigel, it's Joe. It seems as though so far the U.S. equity markets have dismissed what's going on in the emerging market. Should I be concerned about it?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's a mess there. I actually think this could be an entry point. In the emerging markets, wow, some of those valuations are cheap, but hey, you know, I've said that before. We are actually kind of bouncing at a triple bottom if you look at some of the averages for technicians. So if we don't go much farther from here, we could build a base. I think 3 to 5 years hence, those people who can stand the short-term volatility will be rewarded in the emerging markets. But yeah, those markets are the most volatile of the major market classes.
Boy, you got to hold on for a long time, 3 to 5 years to make that trade work.
It may work much faster, but you know, if you're just going to be a short-term player, you're never going to, you know, capture the good value points in the market. And, you know, we all know the story about the don't catch a falling knife, and that's what emerging markets seem to be. But, wow, I mean, take a look at the PE ratios, 10, 11, 12. These countries are still, you know, I'm not talking about Venezuela and Turkey, but the rest of them are still selling at, you know, growing at 3, 4, 5%. And, you know, that, I think, is a pretty compelling value play. For those people who can, you know, look toward that longer term.
Do you have any pause at all when you look at interest rates and the fact that they're just barely budging in an economy that is seemingly running on all or most cylinders?
Well, you know, I mean, last December, people asked me what the 10-year was going to end at, and, you know, it was selling in the low 2s, and I said it was going to end at 3 1/4 this year. It still might, but boy, it's shown a lot of strength. There's a lot of people that want to hold treasuries. They've turned into a great short-term hedge against volatility, and they kind of tuck them into their portfolio as an insurance policy, and they don't care that much about their yield. And, you know, as long as those treasuries have that so to speak, negative correlation with the risk markets, there is a huge demand out there. So, you know, I mean, whether we get to 3 1/4, which I think there's still going to be 2 hikes left, you know, which brings you into the low, you know, certainly the low 3s in terms of, you know, where the Fed funds rate is going to be going. You know, my feeling is the 10-year is going to rise. But, yeah, there's remarkable strength there.
Is that going to stifle stocks as we go into the later part of the year? You only have less than a handful of months to go. If rates start rising, I don't know that the stock market's going to love that.
They won't. I mean, that is you know, the second most powerful influence on stock prices is interest rates. And the first is earnings. And earnings are good this year, and everyone knows it. Next year, they're projected to be up more than I think they will. I think they're going to come down. So I don't think we're going to get a lot extra kick from the earnings. And that's why interest rates then fall into it. That all being said, if Trump in the next 3 weeks can solve Canada and solve China, we got a 10% pop, I think, in the markets there. And then they're going to have to face what the Fed is going to do with interest rates.
All right, that's a soundbite I suspect you're going to hear often on the network in the days ahead. Professor Josh Brown has a question for you.
Hey, Dr. Seigel, in your book, Stocks for the Long Term, you looked at some of the pervasive characteristics of markets over time. There's a study out that over the last 90 years, when the S&P is up between 5 and 10% through the month of August, 12 out of the 13 times that's occurred, you've seen stocks finish the next 4 months higher. And I chalk that up to career risk and people who work on Wall Street that have trailed getting more aggressive into year-end so that they don't get fired in January. Do you think there's anything to that? Should we think that this is the year that bucks that trend? Because 12 of 13 is like a 92% probability that we could not have a melt-up but go up into the close.
You know, absolutely. And there's that FOMO factor, fear of missing out. You know, it's been a good year, and the S&P has taken it to a lot of other averages. Probably maybe the Russell has been one that's, you know, somewhat outperformed, being more immune to the trade problems that we have. That's why if the trade problems get solved up, we're going to see the S&P pop much more than the small stock index. But yeah, those trend riders are going to be on there, and as long as those trends are in place, you know, it's going to be very painful for someone to go against this market.
Yep, they're learning that lesson very well. Professor, it's always good to talk to you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, the Wharton's Jeremy Seigel. Bitcoin price is getting hit today, sinking back below 7,000. For more, let's bring in Dominic Chu, the Futures Now crew.